It's 900 hours Central African time. It's midweek here on the Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis President.
I'm Kendall Makamat.
Now, we will be with you until 12 o'clock today. Now, today we focus on a very important issue, a very disturbing issue as well, Kendall. We're looking at the 55-year-old mother who was accused of killing the alleged perpetrators that gang raped a 27-year-old daughter. And that's why we're asking you this question, because it's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, I mean, they were in the process of doing this heinous deed, and we want to find out from you, do you think the law is in favor of A, the victim, or B, the perpetrator? In this case, the mother who then stabbed these three people who were gang raping her daughter.
Well, that's on the poll. It's not on right now because we have some technical difficulties, but as soon as we get it up, we'll show it to you and some of the people that have voted already. But you can participate in that poll on SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page.
In fact, as a matter of fact, we should be able to bring it to you now, Elvis. I think we've managed to figure it out and sort it out. Let's see if we can share it with you on screen right now so you can see exactly what it is we're talking about.
There we go.
Here we go. We've got 104 votes in already where people have said, you know what, 31% believe the law is in favor of only the victim and 69% the perpetrator.
69%, a very disturbing number. But you're also tweeting us, but we're not going to do it right now. We're going to do it a little bit later as soon as we get all those tweets in and we're going to share it with you. But we also focus on the US President, Donald Trump. He was speaking at the United Nations where he warned that the US would totally destroy North Korea if threatened. And that is if Pyongyang need to also realize that it must give up its nuclear weapons. So this is a threat, Kendall.
Absolutely. That's Donald Trump speaking to the United Nations General Assembly yesterday. And we want to find out from you, what do you make of US President Donald Trump's threat to utterly destroy North Korea?
That's the question today for you. Let us know what's on your mind. But we're also talking sports, as usual, on Newsroom. And Orlando Pirates, of course, they came back.
Absolutely. Orlando Pirates are doing extremely well. They are top in the log. You know, they haven't just come back. They haven't just turned the corner, some people are saying. Some people are saying it's a little early, but we want you to tell us, what do you think? Can Orlando Pirates maintain the form that has gotten them to the top of the absolute premiership log?
Well, this after beating Benny in the 18 area, of course, last night. So let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. Former KwaZulu-Natal Premier Senzo Mchunu is to testify before the Moerani Commission investigating political killings in the province. More companies are considering whether to continue business or cut ties with the auditing firm KPMG. And the death toll from a powerful earthquake that rocked Mexico has increased to 224 people. And those numbers are increasing as we speak. We'll keep you updated on that story. But, of course, Kendall is standing by with your sports news and the news.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Good morning to you. This is what we've got planned for you. Before I bring you the news, this is what's happening in the world of sports. Orlando Pirates edge Cape Town City at the FNB Stadium after citizen keeper Shoaib Walters inexplicably fails to deal with a routine cross.
As for the goalkeeper, what was he doing, Shoaib Walters?
Messi, who's been so effective. Messi to Vidal, to Messi! Classic Messi, vintage Messi, 4-goal Messi.
In La Liga, the phenomenal Lionel Messi orchestrates a 6-1 rout of helpless Eibar as Barcelona cement their place at the top of the log.
And just as easy as you like, Ben Stokes just chips it into the crowd. And it's Stokes and Bairstow that see England over the line.
England crushed the West Indies by 7 wickets, giving Sri Lanka automatic qualification to the 2019 World Cup. I'll bring this to you later on during the sports bulletin around about 10:40. But for now, let's bring you our top stories for the day. My name is Kendall Makamat. You're watching Newsroom. Now, the death toll from a powerful earthquake that rocked Mexico has increased to 224 people. It brought down buildings in the heavily populated capital where rescuers are still searching frantically for survivors under the rubble. Videos posted on social media shortly after the collapse showed clouds of dust and debris from a collapsed building. First responders could be seen removing people on stretchers as crowds filled the streets. Earthquakes of magnitude 7 or above are regarded as major and are capable of causing widespread heavy damage. In the capital, at least one survivor was pulled from a collapsed building and another rescued from a 6-story apartment building nearby. The death toll is expected to rise. The quake hit on the anniversary of a devastating 1985 quake which killed 10,000 people in Mexico City. And 2 mine workers have died in a rockfall at Impala Platinum Mines near Rustenburg. Implat's spokesperson Johan Tron says the incident happened at the number 12 shaft. An investigation is underway. The accident came amid reports that Implat was talking to government and unions about the retrenchment of up to 2,500 miners at its Rustenburg operations. Impala Platinum Holdings has issued a notice to unions, government and other stakeholders that it has initiated a Section 189 consultation process. This may lead to staff reductions to cope with financial pressures amid high production costs. And about 158 miners that staged an underground sit-in since last week Friday have returned to the surface. The protest action took place at 2 Ekapa mining joint venture shafts in Kimberley. The miners had refused to return to the surface until their demand for a 17% wage increase.
They agreed for the sit-in, and the other thing is that we informed them that the strike is continuing. Other issues then are going to be dealt with at that particular forum, where we are led as a union by the Deputy General Secretary, Comrade William Mabapa. So we are very proud that we have managed to crack this hard nut.
More companies are considering whether to continue business or cut ties with auditing firm KPMG. There's an investigation linking the firm to work it did for the Guptas. KPMG chairperson John Weyman has meanwhile apologized for failings in South Africa.
Brokerage firm Sasfin has cut ties with the auditing firm. Group says it will be changing its independent sponsor. It says that KPMG and the Grant Thornton Johannesburg partnership have been joint auditors of Sasfin Holdings, but it will rotate auditors earlier than planned and put the job out to tender. A few hours after Sasfin released a statement, energy and investment company Hulisani auditor, citing reputational risk. Several major KPMG clients, including Absa, Investec and Standard Bank, said they were considering their options. Several companies had already cut ties with KPMG. KPMG cleared out its South African leadership en masse on Friday after a damning internal investigation into work the firm did for the Guptas. The audit firm withdrew part of its report into the so-called rogue unit at the South African Revenue Services. KPMG has denied that any of its staff members were involved in corruption or criminal activity, but it has admitted that standards associated with these audits fell short.
Now, former KwaZulu-Natal Premier Senzo Mchunu is to testify before the Moerane Commission investigating political killings in the province. The Moerane Commission was established by KwaZulu-Natal Premier Willis Mchunu to probe political killings. According to information, have been killed at Cleveland's hostel in the past 3 years. Some of the killings are believed to be linked to the sale or allocation of hostel beds. The commission continues today. The inquiry is expected to be completed in October. Now, more than 20 grade 4 pupils on Gauteng's East Rand are now on HIV treatment after they were pricked with what appears to be used syringes.
It was the start of what was supposed to have been a normal school day. But just before 9 a.m. last Wednesday morning, a horrific episode. 23 pupils, including this 9-year-old, pricked with used syringes. This was allegedly done by fellow classmates.
My wife is the one who went to the school to pick the child up after receiving a call that my child has been pricked
drew a blank.
He is going to
The 11-year-old get her hands on the syringe. Classmate told her that she picked the syringes up in the street on her way to school. But the deputy principal says the pupil brought them from home where a relative was using them.
The person that must be charged, it will be the person who owns the syringe. The school on how these syringes landed into the bag.
The girl was later brought here and put on a month's supply of HIV treatment.
You have to test again after that post-exposure prophylaxis period to ensure that there was no infection that was transmitted during the injury, which was intentional. Because children can easily get HIV.
The SABC understands no action has been taken against the minor responsible.
Will receive will address
Oliver Tambo. The UN marks 70. President is credited with building international relations when South Africa was still isolated. But also important will be the signing of the treaty which prohibits the use of nuclear weapons. This reflects the country's commitment to eradicate nuclear. Here, he'll be outlining the country's vision for a better country.
China and Russia an embarrassment to the United States, while complaining about Washington's share of the UN budget, which at 22.
Excellency Donald Trump.
It was an aggressive debut at the UN General Assembly. After welcoming visiting leaders to his hometown of New York, he focused his attention on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and had choice words for its leader, Kim Jong-un.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a for his regime. The United States is ready. This will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
He accused the Iranian government of masking a corrupt dictatorship, calling it an economically depleted rogue state.
Let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me. In foreign affairs,
He grumbled about the U.S. contribution of 22% to the UN budget, lamented the election of countries with poor human rights records to the UN's Human Rights Council, and called for human rights and democracy to be restored in Cuba and Venezuela.
The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. From the Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela, wherever true socialism or communism has been adopted, it has delivered anguish and devastation and failure. Those who preach the tenets of these discredited ideologies only contribute to the continued suffering of the people who live under these cruel systems.
The speech was laden with Trump's America First rhetoric, calling on all responsible leaders to put the interests of their own countries first. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
And of course, we want you to get involved with that particular conversation. We want to find out from you, what do you make of Donald Trump's threat? We do know that you have been interacting with us on social media, and let's see what's being said by you on the matter. We're looking at a possible World War III. Some people are saying Onuka comes in with the GOP should call Trump to order. The world needs peace. So we've got other news that we'll be trying to get your interaction with us on. And on the poll that we have today, we focus on the 55-year-old mother who's accused of killing the alleged rapist that she found gang raping her 27-year-old daughter. There were 3. She stabbed 1 to death and injured 2. And we want to find out from you, do you think the law in this, which is in this case the daughter, or B, the perpetrator, which is in this case the mother? Kudani comes in with it and says it's simple. In South Africa, rather be the perpetrator, even it is on what some of you think happens in our justice. Is standing by.
Yes, thank you, Kendall. That's the question, of course, we pose to you. Would like you to interact with us. 5-year-old woman from Lady Frey in the Eastern Cape says that she still can't believe that one of them is a relative. The woman allegedly killed one of her 27-year-old daughter's alleged rapist, who was related to the victim, and wounded 2 others. One is in a stable condition in hospital. The woman, who is currently out on bail of 500 rand, says that local women in the area live in fear.
An alleged gang rape by the man the family are well acquainted with. The mother had confronted the man allegedly raping her daughter.
This makes me doubt human nature and if Ubuntu still exists. Because when you are working with a relative, you are expecting them to protect you. In my blog, there's 2 grannies that got raped.
A cloak of fear now envelops the community, but they are rallying together.
To come together as residents, and we want this to be as transparent to everyone.
The police say the alleged rape took place after a night of drinking.
The White House behind me is where the alleged rape ordeal occurred. The victim's mother claims she used the back door to gain entrance, and that is where her worst nightmare was confirmed.
The mother and one of the alleged rapists have appeared in court.
Mother of the deceased, of the rape victim, appeared in court and was released on bail of 500 rand. And its case was remanded to the 9th of October again to suspects. The
Woman with her legal fees. I am Atula Joga for SABC News, Queenstown.
Now, for more on the story, we're joined in studio by Lisa Vetten, who's a senior researcher and policy analyst at on End Violence Against Women. A very good morning to you, Lisa, and welcome.
Good morning.
Do have more rights than victims in South Africa. Now, looking at the case of the Lion Mama, they call her now, who witnessed her daughter being raped and jumping in as the protector of her daughter, are we then perhaps apathetic, perhaps, or the reality, looking at the reality of sexual violence in the country?
Well, I think you are perfectly entitled to go to somebody's aid who is being attacked. So I think what she did would legally be justifiable in terms of the law, stepping in and intervening. The question, of course, will become whether or not she was acting in self-defense because the men attempted to attack her in turn when she tried to protect her daughter, or try and argue formulated intent to kill and therefore committed premeditated murder. So it's going to turn on, I think, some quite technical questions, and it will be important that she has good legal representation, because if they do show that it's premeditated murder, she does face a life sentence.
Are there limitations, perhaps, and this is a legal question, but from your perspective, are there limitations when it comes to protecting oneself, self-defense that is, or protecting somebody else who was close to you, family member?
Well, the law of self-defense does recognize that you have a right or interest in yourself and your property and people who mean significant things to you. In other words, your family members. So you are entitled to protect yourself under those circumstances. Again, it's going to depend on whether or not the courts will decide, did she use force that was disproportionate? Was there an immediate threat to her? Who attacked first? So I think those will be the questions that we'll have to watch and see what the prosecution does when the trial does start.
Which of our expectations about gender and sexuality and power promote this culture of rape, or rape culture as we call it?
Well, I think there's a massive sense of entitlement exhibited by very many rapists. They have the sense of, well, women's primary purpose in life is to say yes or no. That's what they're there for, and therefore I'm entitled to take it, even if a woman does say no. Then I think you also get a certain kind of man who doesn't believe women are entitled to say no and feels so humiliated that feels that punishment in the form of rape is the only way to respond.
How do we as a society begin to challenge that and to make sure that we can address the issue of rape culture?
Well, I think some of the education campaigns that are happening are, of course, important. I think it's also really important that the criminal justice system work effectively, that we stop accepting excuses like, oh, well, you mustn't go drinking with men and wearing short skirts because what message are you sending to them? And I think there's often, and without wanting to sound like I'm promoting vigilantism, I think there is an expectation that there is a belief that women are weaker than men. And I think this particular woman, the mother, shows that that is not the case. And perhaps it might not be a bad idea for men to start becoming a little more frightened of women.
And they should learn a little bit more that women are very strong.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, is there also perhaps a sense that we are trivializing sexual violence or perhaps the minimization of the actions and the beliefs and values that eventually contribute to this particular problem in our societies?
I think we have a very ambivalent attitude towards rape. If it is a woman walking back from church on a Sunday and she's viciously attacked by 6 men and brutally injured, we'll be very outraged. But if she is a 15-year-old girl who went out without her mother knowing and went off drinking and she is raped, then we will be a whole lot less sympathetic. So I think it's because we have this very mixed attitude to rape. It sends the message more broadly, I think, to many men that pick your victim carefully. Some women you will be able to get away with it because you just need to say, oh, she was having sex behind her mother's back, oh, she was drunk, oh, she has lots of sex with lots of different men, she's just crying rape now to cover up. So I think, until we address the fact that even if you know the perpetrator, whatever you were drinking, whatever you were wearing, it is still rape if you said no. We're going to continue having this problem, and we're going to be continuing to sort out our victims into victims we should be sympathetic towards and victims who we should blame because of the way they behaved, rather than holding the rapist responsible.
Is it ever okay to fight back?
It's always important to fight back. Sometimes you can't because there is a weapon, and sometimes the fear is so overwhelming that you can't fight back. But I think obviously if you are not being hit harder, then fighting back is a very important response.
Is there sympathy from the law to protect women in that particular regard, you think?
You know, the law likes it very much if you fight back, because then as far as I think decision makers are concerned, it shows you really did try and resist. If you didn't fight back and you don't have injuries, it's really disadvantageous, which I think is very unfortunate, and the law failing to recognize that you might be smaller, you might be very frightened. This might have happened to you before, and so you may have learned from that previous experience of rape that fighting back is actually doesn't protect you.
Does this maybe now expose the daughter that was raped to secondary trauma, because now her mother needs to go through the system, the justice system, that is?
It may do that. It may also, I think, be very affirming to the daughter that her mother came to her aid and that this rape did not go through the way it should, and who knows what might have happened after the rape as well. So I think, you know, that there is obviously the difficulty of what's now happening to her mother, but I think the sense of support, and it sounds like the community has come out in support as well, which is also, I think, really affirming when you've been through an experience like that.
How important is that support that one would receive from the community, as in this case, where she's actually being helped to pay her bail and so forth, and the legal case for that matter?
I think it's incredibly important. It's clearly, you know, she's not being pushed out of society, because I think then that response, there's a whole difficulty of what has happened to her daughter that must be coped with. I think, you know, even if she killed that man in self-defense, there's still the difficulties that are associated with that kind of action. And then, of course, going through a criminal justice system. So I think the fact that the community is supporting her is important. I mean, it's clearly, that's a community that's become very tired of what's happening there. And I think if we look at what happened in Khayelitsha and the vigilante killings, we should take it, or the police in that area need to take it as a warning to look at how do we improve policing so that we don't have an upsurge in vigilante killings or people feeling the law does nothing for us, we may as well just help ourselves.
Your advice to women today listening to us and talking about this particular problem?
Well, I don't think one should, it's not up to women to prevent rape. It's up to men. So, but I think if I was to give any advice, it would be, if this has happened to you, then you should not be blaming yourself. If you do need some assistance, find a counselling organisation. It's a difficult experience, but it is something that you can get over. And that's, sometimes speaking about it can be very helpful to others. There is help out there, and you should find it and never blame yourself.
Does Tshwaranang assist victims in this particular case?
You know, I actually work for Wits University now, so I knew Tshwaranang a couple of years ago.
Oh, yes.
But as far as I know, Tshwaranang does provide legal assistance. If somebody wants counselling, they can. If they're in the Eastern Cape, there's the Masamanyani Women's Support Centre. So there'd be a range of places to go to for help.
Lisa, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thanks, Elvis.
That was Lisa Vetten, who is a senior researcher and a policy analyst at Wits University. She's no longer with Tshwaranang. I forgot that, legal advice against women. So that's where we got to leave it for now. But of course, there's a question that we pose to you. We'd like you to participate in that question. It's also a poll that we want to find out what is your thoughts. Let's take a look at that poll, if it's possible. Put it up for us. There we go. That's the numbers so far. 114 votes in. Do you think that the law is in favor of A, the victim, or B, the perpetrator? Well, so far, 28% of you are saying, yeah, it's in favor of the law, of the victim rather, and 72% says it's in favor of the perpetrator. There's a couple of tweets coming through as well. Let's take a quick look at this one. Seppo says the NPA is useless. It supports the perpetrators, and the constitution of today only favors those who have money. This one coming in from Matthews that says, this NPA thing must be cancelled. I don't see their job. As the National Prosecuting Authority, that you don't see do that job. But let's now take a look at what's trending on social media. And we start off in Twitter. We start with some international news. The 7.1 magnitude earthquake has struck Mexico City yesterday, killing more than 150 people. Rescue teams are still searching for the trapped victims there. There is also a powerful image of people holding a fist fist in the air. When a crowd is doing this, it means that there needs to be absolute silence so that they can hear for screams from the trapped victims underground. Then there was a touching video of a dog being rescued. Crowds cheered as the dog was released from the rubble. But residents spotted a volcano streaming around 70 kilometers away from where the earthquake struck. That's in Mexico. Hashtag Mexico earthquake. Coming back home, yesterday, crowds marched to the Vodacom head office to demand that data must fall and data must be reduced. Data rip-off or bargain, there it says on your screen. South Africa, 1 gig, 160 Rand. Kenya, 1 gig, 60 Rand. Nigeria, 32 Rand. And Rwanda, 21 Rand. Can you believe it? That's the cost of data in this country. And then some disturbing news. More than 20 grade 4 pupils at a secondary school in the East Rand have been placed on ARVs after they were allegedly pricked with a dirty syringe by one of their classmates. Hashtag syringes. Now, how disturbing is that? Children walking around with syringes to school. So now, does it indicate that kids at the age of 5, 6 must be searched before they get into school? Well, and just when we thought the West couldn't face any more natural disasters, Hurricane Irma didn't travel alone. Hurricane Maria has caused destruction along the Caribbean island of Dominica. Look at some of those pictures coming through there. Our picture of the day comes from Julio Romero, 1990, and shows the aftermath of an earthquake there in Mexico. It says hashtag pray for Mexico, hashtag Mexico earthquake. Look at some of those pictures coming through there. And then comes from Koshik Karan, who says in South Africa, 10 liters of petrol is cheaper than 1 gigabyte. Well, clearly, we have a problem. Hashtag data must fall. Well, there you have it. That's a perspective, isn't it? Let's now take a look at what's happening in the courts. And we start off in Durban. 2 more suspects are expected in court for the first time regarding the former Higher Education Minister Mduduzi Manana's assault case. Now, the pair were arrested after being identified by the victim outside the Randburg Magistrates Court, where they had gone to show support for Manana during his bail application on August the 10th. Moving on to Cape Town, 53 people are due to appear in the Athlone Magistrates Court in connection with violence related to the taxi strike on Monday. Now, they were arrested in Nyanga on the Cape Flats. Several vehicles were stoned along Borchard's Quarry near the N2, forcing authorities to close the road. A My City bus was also burnt on the R300 along the highway. Police say several properties were also vandalized. The situation has normalized after the strike was called off on Monday afternoon, and commuters were seen boarding minibus taxis to work yesterday. We also spoke to the MEC yesterday, and he confirmed that the strike is off. There is some issues that is being sorted out. Now, still in Athlone, a 26-year-old man is due to appear in the Athlone Magistrates Court in connection with the murder of Aviwe Jam Jam. Her body was found in Vegiskral Stadium on the 29th of July. The suspect was arrested just after he appeared in a Khayelitsha court on another case last month. He was apparently Jam Jam's boyfriend. Now, these are some of the stories we'll keep you updated on throughout the week, so stay tuned. Let's throw forward now. Looking at tomorrow on the show, we will be looking at the challenges in the fishing industry. Now, this follows violent protests by small-scale fishermen in Hout Bay over the allocation of fishing licenses and quotas. Now, there are subsistence farmers there that haven't got any quotas, and they need an interim solution. We want to find out where is the situation. There was also a meeting with the minister. We want to find out more about that. And that's a very important story, especially for communities living on the coast. But that's tomorrow, starting at 9 o'clock. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
Do you have a funeral policy? No matter the sacrifices you've made or the hours you've worked, you can't always say yes. Avbob's cashback funeral plan not only provides funeral insurance for your family, but also helps you to say yes to life's little extras more often. Because for every 5 claim-free years, you'll get your 5th year's premiums based on your monthly premium value paid back in cash. SMS cash to 41790 and we'll call you. Avbob, we're here for you.
SMS cash to 41790 and Avbob will contact you.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur 4th tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Udemwo has rallied behind the woman who rescued her daughter from 3 rapists in Eastern Cape, Mount Frere. Udemwo believes that the lives of the woman and her daughter were in danger. The organization further says that any mother would have acted the same under the circumstances. Now, to talk to us more about this from Udemwo, we are joined by Thandi Notenja, who is the National Secretary. A very good morning to you, Thandi, and welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremost, tell us, why are you in support of the now called Lion Mama?
As Udemwo, we feel that this mother did what any mother could have done. But for us, it goes beyond that. She showed such bravery. I mean, to go out in the night and search for your child who's being raped, it was such a high risk of both of them being killed, but she took that risk.
Have you met with her, and what kind of support will you be providing to her?
We haven't met with her as Udemwo National because we are based here in Gauteng, but our members locally are going to rally behind her. They're going to court with her on the 9th of October. They will give all the support that she requires. And our feeling is that she shouldn't be traumatized by going to court and all that when you look at the situation that she found her daughter in.
Firstly, tell us about your organization, Udemwo, and what do you do?
Udemwo is the women wing of the UDM, United Democratic Movement. We are a women's organization within the organization of UDM.
Now, do you think...
We are looking at the interests of women.
Yes. Now, do you think that it's fair for Lion Mama, I would call her, to be charged after fighting back for her daughter?
We feel it's so unfair. It's adding trauma. Seeing your child in that state, killing somebody in defense, is a trauma in itself. And now to be subjected to court and being grilled by the lawyers who will be standing in for the perpetrators, to me that favors the perpetrators more than the victims. This mother, much as she took this step, is a victim herself because she could have been killed by those 3 men together with her daughter.
Now, today we are conducting a poll, Thandi, and we're asking really our viewers if the law is in favor of the victim or the perpetrators. And currently our numbers, if we look at the numbers there, it indicates that we have 114 votes in, and it looks like 76% of our viewers are suggesting that the law is in favor of the perpetrator. Do you concur with the outcome of that particular poll, and do you think that that is the case, that perpetrators are more basically covered by the law than the victim?
I concur with the view. And we feel that as the youth demo, we feel that there is a gap between the SABC, the justice system, and the correctional services. If those three departments can work in a synergy, where if the police, who didn't answer the phone on the night, do their work and manage to get arrest the people, the justice system is either they're gonna give them a bail or lenient sentences. If they do sentence them, they get to the correctional services and they get early paroles and all that, and they go back and they do the same thing. So we are calling for the government to really tighten these three departments to work together.
Now, the woman who protected her daughter is currently out on bail of 500 Rand, and she says that the local women in the area are living in fear. Do you think that this would help her case further?
It might help her case further, but it's not an isolated thing to Lady Frey. The women in South Africa are under siege. If you can look at the news daily, this is happening right through the country. And as I've stated earlier on, traumatizing her further by making her appear in court is more than killing her, more than she's been killed. That woman is gonna battle to live her life through replaying the incident of that night. The two women are in a predicament where the daughter, when she sees the mother going to court and being tortured, because it's more like being tortured by those lawyers who will be representing the so-called victims now, who were the perpetrators, she will keep on blaming herself. So both of them are battling to live through what they've gone through so far.
Mm-hmm. How do you think as a society we should begin to address this issue of rape culture, especially from the political party's perspective?
Well, we once again put the blame on the governments to work with the communities, because even if the communities can pinpoint the suspects, there is some loopholes on the government side. And we are also calling on the minister who should be looking after women to say, Minister Shabangu, it's high time that you touch ground with the communities to educate them. State that the rape is something that we must fight as women. We mustn't say, because we start pointing fingers at somebody who's been raped without knowing that tomorrow it might be me. So this thing doesn't have a political line. It doesn't know who's affiliated to where. It's a case. It's something that the communities have to fight together. So as women, we should stand together, forget about political alliances, just take the community line and say, as this community, we will support one another, we will stand together against this.
Tandi, in conclusion, do you think then the law should change in order to favor victims of crime rather than perpetrators?
Absolutely. The perpetrators, they seem to have more rights than the victims, rights which they should forfeit when they violate other people's rights, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So we think that the law should be changed to really look at the victims now, more than the perpetrators.
Ms. Notenja, thank you so much for your time in joining us in our Pretoria studios.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now that was Tandi Notenja. She's the National Secretary of UDEMWO. That is, of course, the UDM's Women's Wing. Now, let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. And we start off with 3 KwaZulu-Natal bodyguards that will appear at the Durban Magistrates Courts today for unlawful possession of firearms. Police Minister Fikile Mbalula says 4 pistols, 1 rifle and live rounds of ammunition were seized and had been sent for ballistic testing to determine if they have been used in any crime. Then we take a look at hundreds of supporters of the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta who have held demonstrations outside the Supreme Court in Nairobi to protest the ruling which annulled the August election. And Hurricane Maria closed in on the U.S. Virgin Islands late Tuesday as the U.S. National Hurricane Center warned of a potentially catastrophic impact from a storm that has already killed at least 2 people in the Caribbean. Winds packing 255 kilometers an hour, faster than a Ferrari almost. They were already lashing the U.S. islands as Maria barreled westwards. Forecast to make landfall on Wednesday, that's today, before heading to Puerto Rico. Now look at those pictures there. You can find all of those stories and more on our Facebook page and, of course, our SABC News website. Now, let's go to the newspapers and find out what's on the front pages from the newspapers around the globe. And we start off in New York. The Wall Street Journal reports that President Donald Trump threatened to annihilate North Korea if the U.S. has to defend itself or its allies against the Pyongyang regime, delivering the dire warning yesterday during his first address to the United Nations General Assembly, saying, "We will totally destroy North Korea." Well, moving to Europe, the Times says that Boris Johnson pulled back from the brink of resignation yesterday after striking a backroom deal with Number 10 before a key speech by the Prime Minister. Well, he's going to back off of that Brexit deal, he says. And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that fix it or nix it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the UN General Assembly yesterday, telling the world body that Israel's policy on the Iranian nuclear deal is simple: change it or cancel it. There you have it. Those are your newspapers from around the globe. Right now, to find out what's happening around the weather forecast here in South Africa, not around the globe, we have all these hurricanes happening. Philip Hawkins is standing by with your weather.
Well, thank you very much. Very good morning to you. Let's take a look at what's happening in terms of your weather. South Africa expecting isolated showers. That's just light rainfall and light showers moving through that eastern coastline and into the Mpumalanga province as well as Swaziland and the southern parts of Mozambique. Other than that, just a little bit of cloud cover over the southern coastline, extending through towards the central regions of Namibia. And then, of course, through the northern DRC areas, we see some showers for both today and into tomorrow as well. Tomorrow, though, we see a low pressure system now moving south along that western coastline. And as we know, these systems do draw in quite a bit of rainfall towards that central interior. So for tomorrow, stormy systems starting to develop around Lesotho and areas just southwest of it as well. In South Africa, of course, we also see some isolated showers through that central interior and a low pressure system which is going to join up with this low pressure is approaching from the southwest. That's going to see the possibility of some evening light showers in Cape Town and surrounding areas. Speaking of Cape Town, let's take a look at your temperatures today. Cape Town is rather warm, 27-degree maximum under sunny skies for today. It is a bit windy at 40 kilometers per hour, but it is going to feel nice and warm there under the sunshine. Pretoria, 31 degrees, Durban, 20, and Bloemfontein, a 31-degree maximum as well. Temperatures are going to remain warm in the interior of the Namibian capital here. 34 degrees Celsius in Windhoek. Gaborone peaks at 33, Maun 37. What a scorcher it is there. 35 in Victoria Falls. And take a look at the southern parts there of Mozambique. Maputo, 26 degrees under some cloud cover and indeed some rainfall as well. Sunny skies forecast for the island regions. It's going to be 29 degrees in Victoria, Port Louis 25 and Antananarivo 28 degrees Celsius. A warm one there. Warm conditions do continue through the Central African region. Taking a look at Bangui at 31 degrees, Juba at 34. Temperatures a little bit more mild around some areas. We are seeing some showers and thunder showers developing, in fact, throughout a large portion of the Central African southern regions here. As we take a look to the northern hemisphere, we see showers and thunder showers continuing, especially around Nigeria, around the Central African Republic's eastern regions into Ethiopia. But take a look at this. This system tomorrow will grow all the way through from the southeastern, should I say, parts of Mali down towards Nigeria, into parts of the Central African Republic, and then extend south as well, just into Gabon and surrounding areas. So a stormy system really developing through that area. A lot of storms separately moving, but in general, that's what we're expecting there. Showers and thinner showers towards the east as well. That's where we leave your weather for now. Stay tuned with the SABC.
When I was passing the casino, I said, that edge came, said, I'll just try, you never know. You might go home with 80,000, times 4 the amount that you have. And that stupid day, I lost all my money.
Never allow glamorous lifestyles to push you beyond your means.
The awakening moment was that 2007, when I left my children alone. I realized this is hurting me.
Ask for professional help if gambling is controlling you. Know when to stop.
I faced reality that, for you there's no quick reach, so you just have to work hard. So it's gone.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday at 17:30.
What guides us? Is it something you can touch, hear, feel, or see? What leads us on to greater experiences? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
We are your eyes in all major events around the world.
A wonder not seen in the United States in almost 100 years.
It looks like the sky of a different world. You see the stars out during the day. You see a sunset 360 degrees all around you.
Before you leave, make sure that Rob Byrne is taking you through traffic alert all around South Africa.
All we can do is stick to what we do and focus on our own job and not focus on them.
The Boks will also don the red jersey in this match to mark the 25th anniversary of rugby unity in South Africa.
An update on all major currency to guide you. A story of women in jail told in pictures by Fatima Mir through art that will blow your mind. Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into Black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the Black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
There may be associated problem with the arteries of the heart in patients with hypertensive heart disease, and in some instances it's just pure the muscle disease problem. The statistics show us that half the population of individuals with high blood pressure are not even aware that they've got high blood pressure.
It's the amount of salt we eat, because there's a big influence on our blood pressure levels. So using less salt when you're cooking, less salty spices when you're cooking, not adding salt at the table, but rather using other spices and herbs to flavor your food. And then, of course, how much sugar you eat is also very important.
If you start becoming uncomfortable, or where you feel that your effort tolerance is becoming less, you can't lie flat, you run short of breath, you start swelling in the legs and so on, it's high time that one should consult a doctor.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
What guides us? Is it something you can see?
We need deliverance from sin, because God never
Hear?
carry on working to spread the message
Feel?
to the whole world.
Or touch? What leads us onto greater experiences? Is it the words of our sacred texts? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Yes, it's the second hour here on the Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Mahamati.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we're conducting a poll on the focus on that 55-year-old mother who was accused of killing the alleged perpetrator that raped her 27-year-old daughter. And we're asking you this question.
We want to find out from you. What do you think the law is in favor of? A, the victim, in this case, the daughter who was being gang raped when her mother walked in, or B, the perpetrator, who in this instance is the mother who then took to stabbing these rapists? 164
votes in, and as you can see, 77% are suggesting that the perpetrators, the law is in favor of them, and only 23% says it's in favor of the victim. But there's a couple of tweets as well, Ken.
Well, we've got one from G-Bus says, unfortunately, the legal system is either fast asleep or non-existent. Perpetrators seem to have all the rights. The victims don't. Sad.
Now, we were supposed to have Ulrich Roux in studio today, but unfortunately he had to go to court to give us the legal perspective on this issue, but you can still comment on it. Andrew says, the South African law is in favor of those with money. If you are not loaded, do not even bother to open a case. Well, there you have it. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but we also focus on a question this morning on the U.S. The president there, Donald Trump, He was at the United Nations and he warned North Korea that he would totally destroy them. Well, that's a warning there from Donald, and that's why we're asking you.
Absolutely, with the threat of World War III looming, I want to find out from you, what do you make of Donald Trump's threats to utterly crush and destroy North Korea?
Let's take a look at what you're telling us. This one coming from Andrew says, Uncle Trump is out of order. I believe there are better ways to deal with North Korea.
Kristen says he's proven that he likes to poke the bear, so to speak. He wants to make money off the war he's creating, and you know what? He will.
Well, so said Kirsten. Yeah, keep them coming. We'll read them, guys, as we continue. But we also focus on sport this morning. Orlando Pirates. We want to know from you, what do you make of this particular...
Call it that.
Orlando Pirates.
They finished out of the top 8 last year. Now they are top in the log after 5 matches. Do you think that Pirates will be able to maintain this kind of form that's actually gotten them to top the log?
King Solomon says the performance is pleasing and the morale of the players is high. The momentum will continue. Unlike the other team, I know.
And there's a Kaizer Chiefs, so that's for you, Elvis. That one's definitely for you. Directed at you, Kaizer Chiefs fan. Nkosi Thomas, 0-2, says they need to start scoring more goals per game. The team will need those goals come the end of the season. Yes, Pirates, I think, has only scored 4 goals so far. But you know what? It's good enough to making sure the goals don't go in against them either.
Well, that's true, but that's what we have for you. Let's take a look now at your news headlines. Former KwaZulu-Natal Premier Senzo Mchunu is to testify before the Moreani Commission investigating political killings in the province. Will probably go there live shortly as soon as they do go live. More companies are considering whether to continue their business or cut ties with the auditing firm KPMG. And the death toll from a powerful earthquake that rocked Mexico has increased to 224 people. Now we'll keep you updated on that storm and the numbers, of course, which we are being told are increasing. So we'll keep you updated on the numbers as well. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports field.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Very interesting topic there. Quite one makes me wonder what happens to all those other SOEs that have got audit firms that have been okaying some of the maladministration that's been going on there. This is what we have for you in sports today. Orlando Pirates edge Cape Town City at the FNB Stadium after the Citizens keeper Shoaib Walters inexplicably fails to deal with a routine cross.
As for the goalkeeper, what was he doing, Shoaib Walters?
Messi, who's been so effective. Messi to Vidal, to Messi! Classic Messi, vintage Messi, 4-goal Messi.
And in La Liga, the phenomenal Lionel Messi orchestrates a 6-1 rout of helpless Eibar as Barcelona cement their place at the top of the log.
And just as easy as you like, Ben Stokes just chips it into the crowd. And it's Stokes and Bairstow that see England over the line.
And England crushed the West Indies by 7 wickets, giving Sri Lanka automatic qualification to the 2019 World Cup. And in this hour, I've prepared a treat for you. Stephen Mokoka, South Africa's fastest man over 10 kilometers, will be in studio right here, chatting to me about his attempt to run the fastest 10K in 2017 out in Durban. But more about this a little later. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The death toll from a powerful earthquake that rocked Mexico has increased to 248 people. The quake brought down buildings in the heavily populated capital where rescuers are still searching frantically for survivors under the rubble. Videos posted on social media shortly after the collapse showed clouds of dust and debris from the collapsed building. First responders could be seen removing people on stretchers as crowds filled the streets. Earthquakes of the magnitude 7 or above are regarded as major and are capable of causing widespread heavy damage. In the capital, at least one survivor was pulled from a collapsed building and another was rescued from a 6-story apartment building nearby. the death toll is rising. The quake hit on the anniversary of a devastating 1985 quake which killed 10,000 people in Mexico City. Now, news just in, 3 suspects who worked as bodyguards for the Imandeni local municipality mayor are due to appear in the Durban Magistrates Court today. The men, aged between 29 and 40, were allegedly found in possession of firearms and ammunition without the necessary documentation. The bodyguards were employed by the same company as 2 other men who were earlier seen in a video showing off their firearms. KwaZulu-Natal Hawk spokesperson Simpiwe Mshlongo says the seized firearms will be sent for ballistic testing to ascertain whether they were used in any other crimes. Hawks members in Durban, together with the NIU members, have arrested the suspects for unlawful possession of firearms at Mount Edgecombe in that area. The suspects are guarding the mayor of Imandeni local municipality. And as we told you earlier, they were found in possession of 4 pistols and 1 rifle with the ammunition. 5 men arrested in connection with the murder and house robbery of a Northcliffe family here in Johannesburg are expected to appear in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court this morning. The men face murder, kidnapping, theft and house robbery charges after the bodies of Greg, Melanie and Raquel Naidu, who had disappeared from their home in Northcliffe, were found burnt in Centurion. More companies are considering whether to continue business or cut ties with the auditing firm KPMG. Now, this follows a damning scandal involving business friends of President Jacob Zuma, the Guptas. Several South African companies, including Blue Chips, Barclays, Africa, as well as Old Mutual, say they have requested more clarity from KPMG before making final decisions. Investment companies Sasfin and energy investment group Hulasani have already ended their relationship with the firm. KPMG chairperson John Weymeyer has meanwhile apologized for the firm's failings in South Africa. Meanwhile, SAFTU has called on the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants to take action to protect the auditing profession and deal with KPMG by way of fine and use the money to sponsor black students in accountancy. The Federation's General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi, says they reject the apology from KPMG accounting firm for the damage that they inflicted on the whole country as a result of their 2014 report on the SARS rogue unit, which they now admit was a litany of lies. More than 20 grade 4 pupils on Gauteng's East Rand are now on HIV treatment after they were pricked with what appears to be used syringes.
It was the start of what was supposed to have been a normal school day. But just before 9 a.m. last Wednesday morning, a horrific episode. 23 pupils, including this 9-year-old, pricked with used syringes. This was allegedly done by fellow classmates.
My wife is the one who went to the school to pick the child up after receiving a call that my child has been pricked with a needle, and we have to come and fetch her and take her to a health services center.
The girl was rushed to this facility. Doctors here drew a blank.
He is going to see another doctor because he was not sure as to what to prescribe to the child, and also the dosage, because for him it was the first time that he had to deal with a case whereby a child had been pricked with a used needle.
The question remains, how did the 11-year-old get her hands on the syringes? The victim says her fellow classmate told her that she picked the syringes up in the street on her way to school. But the deputy principal says the pupil brought them from home where a relative was using them.
The person that must be charged, it will be the person who owns the syringes, because you need to safeguard them so that they are not accessible. But then the explanation was then given to the school on how these syringes landed into the bag.
The girl was later brought here and put on a month's supply of HIV treatment.
You have to test again after that post-exposure prophylaxis
period to ensure that there was no infection that was transmitted during the injury, which was intentional. It's a cause for concern because children can easily get HIV.
The SABC understands no action has been taken against the minor responsible.
The message that is conveyed is that violence is okay. To hurt others is an acceptable way of behavior. This becomes the norm, and this could only give rise to further violence.
For now, all these parents can do is wait to find out what, if anything, their children may be infected with. Gillian Pillay, SABC News, Kempton Park.
2 mine workers have died in a rockfall at Impala Platinum Mine near Rustenburg. Implat spokesperson Johan Teron says that the incident happened at the number 12 shaft. An investigation is underway. The accident came amid reports that Implats was talking to government and unions about the retrenchment of up to 2,500 miners at its Rustenburg operations. Impala Platinum Holdings has issued a notice to unions, government and other stakeholders that it has initiated a Section 189 consultation process. Now, this may lead to staff reductions to cope with financial pressures and high production cost. The former KwaZulu-Natal Premier and ANC Chairperson Senzo Mchunu is due to testify before the Moerane Commission today. The commission was established by the Premier Willis Mchunu to probe political killings in the province since 2011. Yesterday, IFP National Chairperson Blessed Gwala told the commission that all politically motivated killings that had not been resolved should be investigated, including ones that took place before 2011. Gwala also called for an investigation into allegations that firearms used in a number of killings in KwaZulu-Natal could be traced back to the police. The commission is expected to complete its inquiry in October and then make recommendations to the Premier. Now, as soon as they are ready, we'll cross live to the Moerane Commission to pick it up where they left off yesterday after the IFP. So you have to stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Meanwhile, thousands of commuters in the Hammanskraal, Mobopane and the Moratella areas north of Pretoria have been left stranded this morning following a work stoppage by bus drivers. The strike was called by the members of the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union. We'll keep you abreast of that story as we continue. AfriForum and Zimbabwe's embassy lawyers have until the end of business today to submit additional arguments in the Grace Mugabe assault case. Yesterday, the High Court in Pretoria reserved judgment. AfriForum lawyers want an assurance that Zimbabwe's First Lady will receive a summons for allegedly assaulting Gabriela Engels in a Sandton hotel last month. AfriForum says the application is the first step in their bid to get Mugabe's diplomatic immunity rescinded. The Zimbabwean High Commission has also applied for leave to intervene in the matter. International news now. In his first speech to the United Nations General Assembly, United States President Donald Trump has threatened to totally destroy North Korea while calling on righteous countries to confront the wicked few. In a highly anticipated address, Trump also called the Iran nuclear deal that was reached by 6 entities, including the EU, China and Russia, an embarrassment to the United States, while complaining about Washington's share of the UN budget, which at 22% is the largest of any other member state.
We'll hear an address by his...
It was an aggressive debut at the UN General Assembly. After welcoming visiting leaders to his hometown of New York, he focused his attention on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and had choice words for its leader, Kim Jong-un.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
He accused the Iranian government of masking a corrupt dictatorship, calling it an economically depleted rogue state whose chief export is violence and bloodshed.
We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me. In foreign affairs,
He grumbled about the U.S. contribution of 22% to the UN budget, lamented the election of countries with poor human rights records to the UN's Human Rights Council, and called for human rights and democracy to be restored in Cuba and Venezuela.
The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. From the Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela, wherever true socialism or communism has been adopted, it has delivered anguish and devastation and failure. Those who preach the tenets of these discredited ideologies only contribute to the continued suffering of the people who live under these cruel systems.
The speech was laden with Trump's America First rhetoric, calling on all responsible leaders to put the interests of their own countries first. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
Well, there you have it, news from abroad there, and that's why we're asking you this question. On your screen right now, what do you make of this gentleman? What do you make of the U.S. threat to North Korea? He will totally destroy them. Sounds like a 16-year-old if you ask me. But your thoughts are welcome. Let me take a look at your comments, what you are telling us. This one from On35 says, they should stop with the threats and act already. Korea is a huge international problem. This one from Mahafa Noel says, barking dog does not bite. It's high time the United States stop threatening North Korea, but take real action. Well, if you ask me, those hairstyles says it all between Donald Trump and the North Korean leader, and perhaps they the same. Who knows? But anyway, Heritage Day celebrations under the theme Celebrating Our Diversity will be taking place on the 21st this month of September. And the Steve Tshwete municipality has chosen renowned artist Esther Mahlangu from the Ndebele nation, who is known for her bold, large paintings that reference the Ndebele culture, as an ambassador. Now, with a global career spanning close to 5 decades, Mahlangu was the first person to transfer the traditional Ndebele style of mural paintings to canvas, with her work being exhibited globally. Now, we were expecting her in studio, but now she has apologized, because she feels at her very tender octogenarian age, she's a little jet lagged after landing shortly from New York, where a mural was dedicated to her. She instead has summons the executive mayor of the Steve Tshwete municipality, Mike Messina, to come and say hello and welcome to us. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Morning, Elvis. Thanks for having me.
Now, first and foremostly, you have chosen this well-renowned artist, Esther Mahlangu, as your ambassador. Why?
She's a cultural icon, you know, born and bred in our municipal area, Middelburg. We are very much proud of her. She has achieved, and I think her participation will go a long way to make the day what we want it to be.
What does she mean for the community, especially in the Steve Tshwete municipality?
Like I indicated, you know, she's a cultural icon. When we talk about being proud of your identity, being proud of your achievement, celebrating unity in diversity, we couldn't really pick a better person. We could only go for her because she's known even internationally. We have just indicated that she landed last night. She's jet-lagged, traveling for 15 hours. So, you know, She means so much. That is why we agreed that she must be our ambassador as we celebrate, this Heritage Month.
She's not just a renowned painter, but BMW has chosen her for interior of select BMWs. Now that is absolutely fantastic. You must be proud as the mayor of that area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Elvis. We couldn't ask for more, really. Her stature says it all. And that is why on Thursday is going to be a great day in our municipal area.
Let's take a look at Heritage Day, the celebrations under that theme. Tell us about your celebrations in the area and what you will be doing.
What we'll be doing, Elvis, we are going to gather at Steve Jwete Municipality at our head office. Then we are going to march at O.R. Tambo Street. And the reason we chose to march at O.R. Tambo Street is because of the centenary of this man, who fought for human rights, who made it a point that we are what we are. We are where we are today. So we will be marching there to Gilstaliard. And we have invited all and sundry. Yes. You are going to have your Ndebele ethnic group, Zulu, Mshangana, Xhosa, Afrikaner, Engels, you name it. All of them are going to be there. It's going to be a great day. And with this, we believe that we are going to improve on social cohesion. We are going to promote Ubuntu. And most importantly, of course, Elvis, we are looking forward to that. We will encourage young people to emulate this cultural icon, Umamu Esther Mahlangu. So indeed, young people are invited. In actual fact, you are going to see they will be dominant in terms of attendance, I can assure you.
Now, tell me some of the activities, what will be happening on that day, that you bring all these people together. How will you entertain them for the day? Because it takes a lot to entertain a number of people.
Yes, yes, indeed. Your music, your dancing, all kinds of entertainment that you can think of, poetry. We are really looking forward to celebrate ourselves, and we are going to allow people, to express themselves, culturally speaking, just to show how rich we are, and just to show also that when you talk about economy, the first wealth of the economy must start with your identity. So if we display, this wealth in terms of culture, in terms of identity, it will go a long way to make us more creative in other areas as well.
Tell us how people can get in touch and how can they be part and parcel of this wonderful entertainment, it seems, and a wonderful day that you're going to present to us at the Steve Jwete Municipality.
We have invited them, Elvis. We have actually, as I'm here, I am also reiterating that they are all invited. 9 o'clock sharp at Steve Jwete Local Municipality at our head office. From there, we are going to take this march to O.R. Tambo Street, and then we are going to end at the Gilstaliard Stadium, where, of course, we are going to have this event now taking place, singing, poetry, you name it. And, of course, we will be enjoying a traditional dish there.
Yes, the traditional dishes, because I was going to ask you about that next, because that's one of the main themes for something like this, where people can explore and enjoy other traditions, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, indeed, people can look forward really to great day. We are going to enjoy ourselves.
And not forgetting the koi and the sand. Also part and parcel of
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Elvis. And saying that, I remember I was invited in Nazareth the other time where we actually interacted with Koi and San. It was so good. So we expect them to be there. And usually they perform so well when we have such events.
Mr. Masina, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio, sir. All the best of luck with the celebrations.
Thank you so much, Elvis.
That was the Executive Mayor of the Steve Jwete Municipality, Mike Masina. Of course, the icon Esther Mahlangu will be celebrated. That one, you've seen some of the pictures that we showed you earlier. She's a wonderful icon. At that age, and still such a great painter. Well, right now, importantly, former KwaZulu-Natal Premier and ANC Chairperson Senzo Mchunu. He is due to testify before the Moerane Commission. Now, let's go there live.
TSHWAYO.
Please proceed.
That's why I have a home and family. Education-wise, I attended my primary school at Ntlwathi Primary School, and then proceeded to Mbopa Secondary School at Tlabisa, and then went to Amakolo High School, Esnating in Pietermaritzburg for my matric, and then went to the University of Zululand, where in the first 2 years I obtained a diploma in secondary. It's called a secondary teacher's diploma, but then pursued my studies immediately, pursuing a degree in education in the same university. There are two distinct things that are worth mentioning. The third being that I passed my studies. I was a serious student every year. But in 1983, towards the end of the year, we experienced something that I think had last been experienced by the students in that university in 1976. In 1976, all of us know that the university was engulfed by fire when students, in the spirit of 1976, went on an activity that we're told ended up banning the University of Zululand. In our case, we were students there, and we were informed that the IFP was going to come to the University of Zululand to commemorate King Cetshwayo. And as students, we had a different view of that particular commemoration, as it was called. We reacted by rejecting the notion of a commemoration, and saw it as a kind of invasion, and as a kind of an activity that would, amongst other things, sort of deal with us because we were perceived as hotheads, as students in that university. And indeed, that commemoration left 5 students dead, university students with whom we were in that university, which was a tragedy.
Yes.
A very sad tragedy. And I still do remember that one of the students who died was a Sabelo by surname.
Yes.
And he was killed in his room in a building that we called New York while he was studying. And he was a son of a leading IFP member, I think from Mbumbulu, who was an MP in KwaZulu government. And indeed it fitted our perception that this was no ordinary commemoration, and it ended up resulting into that tragedy.
Yes.
It's something that we'll never forget throughout our lives. And there was fierce fighting at the university, in which I was personally involved, together with many other students. Indeed, it was a tragedy, and I wish that it had never happened, and I wish that it never happens, because it was quite an ugly experience.
Please pause, Mr. Mqunu.
For the record, Mbopa is spelled as capital M-B-O-P-H-A. Amakholwa is capital A-M-A-K-H-O-L-W-A. Sabela is spelled as S-A-B-E-L-A. Mbumbulu, it's E capital M-B-U-M-B-U-L-U.
Thank you. Please proceed.
The other experience, because I wanted to talk about two, and I added one,
yes,
that of my academic progress, which I say was ordinary, but never repeated a year, which means I was a serious student.
Yes.
The second one that I want to refer to was maybe two. In our fourth year, I think. I think it must have been mid-year. We went on strike against bad food at the university. So we went on strike, full strike. And the university closed down, and we were chased away from university. And later on, after a few weeks, we received telegrams. There was still an age of telegrams in a yellowish or pinkish envelope with a window, inviting all students back to the university. And I received one as well at my local, from my local shop where we received post. And I opened it and read it, and it was telling me that I'm denied permission to return when other students return. Now, with a poor background and a poor home, I felt it was going to be difficult to tell my parents that I was denied, to explain myself why I was denied back to the university. So I went back to the university as if it was normal, around Mpang. And I had relatives there. I stayed with them and told them that, look, we're back at university, but there are some delays and so on. And one day I was in town in Mpangen in those days, and quite incidentally I met Ray Zondo, who is now a Deputy Chief Justice.
Yes.
And he was doing his articles. And he said to me they had been looking for me for some time, and I asked why, and he says, no, you are one of the students, 10 students that had been fired. There were 10 of us out of a student body of about 3,000. And I then went with him to the office, and he was busy taking statements from all of us and saying that they were preparing to represent us as fired students. I can't describe the way I was relieved.
Yes.
So my story came back now credible, that no, I left home, come back here, and I'm one of the 10, and we now have defense. We were taken to Durban, to the Liquor Resource Center. That's how I got to know the existence of the Liquor Resource Center. They put up a very good case for us. We were defended, and we won the case, and we were reinstated at the University of Zululand. And I remember it was said there was a clause that disallowed the university to fire us mid-year. Rather, you fire us at the end of the year, not mid-year.
Yes.
So we went back. And so we then proceeded with our studies. But just before we wrote our final exam in our case, fourth-year student, we went on strike again via a student, I think a science student, who had a problem with his lecturer in the Department of Science. And we took exception to what was happening there and what happened to that student, and we went on strike. Now this was the end of 1984. And then we were fired from university, or the university closed down, and we were fired and went home. And the following year, when all other students were invited back to university in their to do their second term, or semester as it was called, I got a letter that said I may not return to the University of Zululand, I may not go to Umlazi campus to complete my studies. I may not be a part-time student. In other words, the university was closed to me. And it was quite bad because I needed a degree and I needed to finish my studies.
Umlazi, was it a satellite campus of the University of Zululand?
Yes, it was. So they just said, no Umlazi, no full-time, no part-time. They just closed doors for me. But I then went, in 1985, I went for teaching because I was armed with a diploma.
Yes.
And I went to St. Augustine's High School to teach there. But then I needed to complete my studies, so I applied through UNISA, and they said they needed a testimonial from the University of Zululand so that they could admit me to finish my studies.
Yes.
And now I had to go back to the University of Zululand to ask for that testimonial. Now, on arrival, I went to the administration and they flatly told me that all my files were read. And so I didn't qualify to get a testimonial. It became apparent that I was one of the students whose name was actually in bad books at the University of Zululand. I don't know how I had accumulated a red record in the books of the university, because I passed all my exams. The main business of a student is to pass the studies. I can only conclude that they got to know about some of our activities which were political, like, we would hold meetings, clandestine meetings inside the university. We would hold student body meetings. We would read books, pen books. We would listen to Radio Freedom, ~6 in the evening. So we did that in groupings, or in times in 2s or in 4s. But I do know that surely, because I had addressed students, the student body, in the 1983 Freedom Square meeting, where we took the decision to defend ourselves against what I said was we perceived as an invasion of the University of Zululand by the IFP.
Where is this Freedom Square? Is it at the university?
It's inside the university.
Okay.
I was the last student to address the student body in that meeting, giving direction in terms of what we needed to do and how we needed to do it and when and so on. And that recommendation or that input was followed as a resolution of the student body meeting at the Freedom Square. And I suppose that I earned myself a bad name from then onwards and so on.
Do you think that is the reason why you were expelled twice, as you say?
I think so. There could be other reasons that the administration knew, because as I say, when we went on strike for food, I was one of the 10 students. And at the end of the year, in my 4th year doing the degree, I was written a letter preventing me from ever studying at the University of Zululand, and I could even get a testimonial because of my being in red books. As a consequence of I think my address at the, to the student board in 1983 and subsequent violence, I must indicate that students from KZN were rounded off by the administration in Ulundi to go to Ulundi, and I think it amounted to something. I wasn't there. I didn't go because I was warned that I was a target. So I didn't go, or that I might be a target, so I didn't go. But I was told that students would be made to stand and give testimony where they were on that day, what they did, what they didn't do, what they said, and so on. But however, I soon had my own day in the parliamentary building in Ulundi, but I was fetched from home, especially by the administration in Ulundi, under Nkosi Mangosuthu, and I was made to...
Sorry, Mr. Mkono, what is his surname?
His surname?
Yes.
Nkosi Mangosuthu Tillis. Yes, under his administration, and he was present there. I was then, I came there with my mom, and I started answering questions from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night.
From 8 in the morning?
8 in the morning, tea break, lunch, and then breaking finally at 8 o'clock at night. By members of their parliament there, and there was a mob behind myself and around. I remember when they asked me what degree I was pursuing at the university, and I said it's BPED. That's the education degree that I was pursuing. And they said, I remember quite a mob behind me saying, "Uzofundisa," looking at me down, sitting there. Uzofundisa, and so on. So it was quite a terrifying experience. I was a young student.
Can you interpret that into English? Uzofundisa?
No, they were saying, why is he going to teach? Why is he going to teach? Quite a mob. Very angry mob. But I responded to all the questions that they were asking. They were, including Nkosi Mangosuthu. He asked me quite a number of questions. It may not be relevant to give you all the details, but it was quite interesting because I remember most of those things that I went through. Nevertheless, so I'm saying I earned myself, I think, a bad name through all those activities and so on.
In fact, I think, Chairperson and Commissioners, our time is limited. Mr. Mkono needs to leave here by latest 2 o'clock. So, Mr. Mkono, I think let's get to your political profile.
All right.
You've already introduced us.
Okay.
You addressed students.
Okay. All right. The only way I could get my testimonial at the university was when I left the administration block at the University of Zululand. I then met somebody, one of the clerks there who I knew, and he said, "What's happening?" And then I said, "No, man, I was here to come and request to get a testimonial. I want to pursue my studies." He said, "What did they say?" And I said, "They said under no circumstances would they ever give me a testimonial." And I was shattered. But then he said, "Well, yeah, hey, your name is not good at all. So, but there's something I can do. Let's go." So he explained to me that the university does have a practice where they can write a letter about you, and it will be up to that university if they take you. And the letter would read as follows. It would say, you can take this student at your own risk. And I got that letter, which said to UNISA, you can take this student at your own risk. And that is the letter that I took to UNISA, and fortunately, at their own risk, they took me. And I'm grateful to Africa, because even though I had a letter like that, they took me and they gave me an opportunity to finish my studies. And I studied and finished my degree. I'm grateful to them to this day.
Good. Are you a member of any political party, Mr. Mkhunu?
Well, I'm a member of the African National Congress, the only organization I've ever joined in my life. I joined it at the unbanning of the African National Congress in 1990. But long before that, I had associated myself with the African National Congress throughout my university life. The literature that I read, including banned literature, yes, including one of the books I read, which had a title, "The ANC Speaks." I like that book. They would supply us. I can't remember who supplied us with this book, but you would get it in one way or the other. So I became the branch secretary of the ANC in 1990, Ngolezane branch in Mpangen. I became the secretary of that branch, first secretary of the branch. But in the same year, I became an interim secretary of the region, which was called Northern Natal region of the ANC. At that time, the ANC was divided into 3 regions here in KZN. There was Northern Natal, Southern Natal, and Midlands.
Yes.
At the end of 1990, I was elected secretary, full-time, a full secretary, not the interim secretary, but full secretary of I left the teaching profession in 1992 in March and became the full-time secretary of the region of the ANC in Northern Natal. And at the end of 1994, the 3 regions amalgamated into one province, the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and I became the first secretary of the province of KwaZulu-Natal at the amalgamation in December 1994. Which lasted till 1996. And at the end of 1996, at the conference, I was asked by the ANC nationally not to avail myself to stand as secretary. This had nothing to do with me personally, but it was worked as a mechanism to resolve a problem that had arisen, and our chairperson was Jacob Zuma at that time in the province, who is now current president.
Yes.
What had happened was that some information had come through about my deputy secretary, who was then the late Sfiso Nkabinde, which was regarded as potentially detrimental to the ANC. And it was undesirable, it was deemed undesirable that you would have a person like him as a leader of the African National Congress. And discussions followed, and then he was called at Shell House, which was the headquarters of the ANC at that time, in Johannesburg. And he was then asked that he shouldn't avail himself as a secretary because he was contesting. He was going to contest me at the end of 1996 as provincial secretary. He had been my deputy for 2 years.
Yes.
Then he then confronted the people who were in the meeting. I think they included Joe Nhlanhla, the late Matthew Posa, Jacob Zuma as chair of KwaZulu-Natal, but he was there as well and so on, saying that no, this was a scheme This had nothing to do with him as a person and his past activities, but it was a scheme by Jacob Zuma to remove him and so on. And he said he was going to avail himself against the will of the ANC and so on. So in December, at the conference of the province, Vali Musa came and he asked me whether I was standing, and I said, in line with the request by the African National Congress not to avail myself, I am not standing. But I did explain to the delegates that I had committed no wrong to the African National Congress, but nevertheless I am complying with the directive given to me by the ANC,
yes,
which was at the risk of my reputation and name, because people were going to ask, there must be something that I had done. But following that meeting in Joburg, Zuma came back and we had a discussion to say, we rather say, because of the contest between Senzo and Sfiso Nkabinde, which we would say is going to potentially divide the ANC in the province, both of us must not stand. But it wasn't necessarily the fact. It was a mechanism we designed and in line with the head office that we should use to prevent Sfiso from standing, which I agreed to, and it was correct based on the information that we had at our disposal. It was the only mechanism left to do in order to deal with him, and it's passed. Now we went through all those things, but in 1997 I then was home. I was home because I couldn't have stood, and I had been full-time in the ANC. And in February, I was called to join the legislature. The chair at that time in the province was Bundebele. He personally phoned to say they'd put me on the list, which I appreciated, and I joined the legislature. And then the following year, that year, I was elected Deputy Secretary of the region in the North Coast, that's back home,
yes,
for a year. Then in 1998, at the conference of the province, I was elected Deputy Secretary of the province, which lasted until 2005, in the middle of the year, and then I was elected back as Provincial Secretary again for the second time, which I did till I was appointed MSc for Education in 2009, and then I left that position as a result of being appointed as MSc for Education. I then became a co-opted member of the PEC, and then in 2012, until 2012, and in 2012 I became an elected member of the PEC of KwaZulu-Natal. And then in 2013 I got elected as a chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal in a provincial general council, replacing Zweli Mkhize, who had been elected Treasurer General in December in Mangaung the previous year. And later became acting premier, and then got appointed as premier in the same year.
Which year?
2013. So I became chair of the province, and then I became acting premier for a few months, and then got appointed as such in the same year. And then 2014 general election, I got reappointed as premier of the province. And then in 2015, in a provincial conference, I was defeated and left as chair of the province and remained as premier. And then in 2016 May, I was fired, which was the second time I got fired. I had been fired at the University of Zululand, and I then got fired as premier of the province in 2016 in May. And from then I've been sitting at home, but because I have a family and I also have my life to look after, and I have responsibility. I've taken to farming. I'm a small farmer at the moment. Yeah, this is what I'm doing in life, small farming.
Thank you. Let's get to the business of the commission. Do you confirm that when we consulted with you, you were given the terms of reference of the commission?
Yes, I was given.
Thank you. Let's get to business. We'll deal with your personal views of the underlying causes of political violence in the province, but in doing that, you can do it in any manner that you have planned. You can go to the history, taken from there, etc. It's entirely up to you.
Okay. Well, once more, my appreciations for being afforded this opportunity. I see it as my own personal contribution to the work of the Commission and towards attaining a province that is violence-free and wherein people live in harmony and peace and pursue their options in life without being disturbed by violence, killings and deaths. I want to start by saying that it is common cause, to borrow that phrase from the legal profession, that violence in the province in the form of pre-colonial wars, colonial wars, and apartheid oppression-related violence is part of our recorded history and part of the overall history of our country. In the not-so-distant past, the mid to the late 1980s, the late 1980s stand out as a period of intensified violence in the province. Violence in this period took the form of murders of targeted politically active individuals, with both Griffiths and Victoria Mxenge as the most remarkable of these individuals who were politically active and were targeted. Griffiths getting murdered, I think, in 1983, and Victoria following with that gruesome murder in Umlazi in 1985.
I think Mxenge was murdered in 1981.
Oh yes, Griffiths. Yeah, 1981. Sorry about that. And Victoria, his wife, following in 1985. Killings at this period appeared to be state-driven, directly or indirectly, and directed to anti-apartheid activists who would be in trade unions, various trade unions in this province, who would be community activists in the townships in particular, who would be political activists, in other words, politicians, academics, and students. So people would be targeted in these categories at various periods. But the collective perception all of us had was that the state is behind these targeted killings, directly or indirectly. State security apparatus, mainly the police and other assassins, were often in the front line in the mass attacks and in the murders. Now, I broaden this because if police themselves in uniform were not said to be involved, but still state apparatus in the form of other assassins associated with the state would be involved. Even other killers taken from various formations in the province would be co-opted or recruited or directed and used in these particular killings.
By the state?
By the state at that time. Towards the close of the 80s and beyond the unbanning of the previously banned political organizations, including the African National Congress, the state exacerbated and fully exploited differences between the UDF-COSATU alliance and INCAT. They were fully conscious of the existence of these formations, political formations, yes, in KwaZulu-Natal in particular. They knew the sentiments that were shared by all of them and the feelings they had about each other, and then they exacerbated the differences between them, and they exploited those differences to fan the fires of violence, consciously so. When the ANC, therefore, was unbanned in 1990, together with other organizations, the province in almost all the four corners was already in fire. KwaZulu-Natal police were now very visible as an extension of the state security machinery and highly involved in the political conflict in the province.
Mr. Mkhunu, you said KwaZulu-Natal police perhaps...
No. By the time the ANC was unbanned, together with other organizations that had been banned, they really were busy building a profile in the eyes of the community, including those of us who were in the ANC, accumulating a profile of involvement in the political conflict between the ANC and the IFP. As police, and that's why I talk about them as an extension of the rock security apparatus of the state.
Yes.
That is South Africa at that time. I could count a few just large-scale incidents of violence, like the 7-Day War in Maritzburg in March 1990. I can refer to other mass killings as well in the same Midlands area towards the close of the 1980s. Shobane massacre in 1995, I think I'm correct. And the killing fields of Mandini.
Yes, it was on Christmas Day, 1995.
Yes, Christmas Day in 1995. And in other words, on the 25th of December 1995. And then the killing fields of Mandeni, Macambini area as testimony of this kind of conflict in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes.
Now, let me summarize it this way for the benefit of the Commission and everybody interested in this. In this conflict, we in the ANC always, and I mean it, always felt we were justified in defending ourselves and our cause in the greater scheme of things. In other words, that when you establish formations like defense units, for instance, you were justified in doing so because there would be individuals, there would be families, there would be villages, there would be townships that would be targeted for murder or assassinations or mass killings for their known sympathy with the African National Congress.
Mr. Mchunu, you say as the ANC you felt justified in defending yourselves against who or against what?
Against, that's where I'm going.
Okay, proceed.
I want to say the state and its machinery was always the enemy against which we needed to defend ourselves. In other words, the apartheid state up to 1994 was our main enemy, and we were clear about it, very unambiguously. The state and its machinery, all of it, in whatever manifestation, it was our enemy. And maybe for the benefit of everybody else, in the ANC, the IFP was never an enemy, so to speak. We always looked beyond it. We always looked at ourselves and the IFP as a victim of a state driven kind of conflict and resultant tension and violence. And they were doing this deliberately. And among the cases, I think the Makuta case, in which Malan who was then Minister of Defense and so on, those are some of the things that were pointers, useful pointers to where violence was masterminded. It was neither masterminded by the ANC nor the IFP.
Yes.
Even though I say KwaZulu police got their own profile through their own involvement, but they were not self-driven in this. They were driven.
I understand.
In this kind of conflict. So, but on the other hand, the IFP, from our interactions with them in meetings and so on, we got to understand that they felt that they were under attack from the UDF, they were under attack from the ANC later on, SDUs, and from COSATU. That was their feeling, and this is what we got from our interacting with them. So on our side, we felt that we were under attack from the apartheid state and its machinery, using whatever they could use, including conflict between the ANC and the IFP. On the other hand, our understanding of the IFP at that time, their attitude, their utterances, it was that the ANC was their enemy. And of course, this perception on their side, as we understood it over time, included a defense of what they perceived as their turf,
yes,
which was otherwise getting invaded by these other forces led by the African National Congress. And I must say, further submit that at this period, especially the close of the 80s up to December 1996, there was a lot of proliferation, if I'm using the correct English word, proliferation of firearms and ammunition, distribution of these apparatus in the province. almost freely available. KwaZulu-Natal is the only province that in the Republic of South Africa that ever received 7 tons of arms and ammunition at one stage, as information got made available to all of us. 7 tons of arms and ammunition at one point.
Mr. Mqunu, excuse me if I'm interjecting prematurely. If you're going to deal with it, that's fine. Who was distributing these arms, or where were they from?
It was the state and its machinery.
Giving it to who?
It gave it to the police and I would say KwaZulu police. I would say identified military kind of formations that had come to the fore. Any formation that would be available to them, and they knew those information was always available to them. They would distribute these firearms in one way or the other. It's no exaggeration to say that at some point you would be very much afraid of existing firearms and ammunition than being afraid of who would carry them. You would just get terrified that there are firearms all over and anybody can lay their hands on them and you would fall victim. Now, I want to conclude at this particular level by saying, perhaps with hindsight, one way the ANC and the IFP would have averted this heavy conflict during which the province lost and families lost their loved ones, numbering thousands. Never mind how many times we pointed fingers at one another.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that there was blood and bodies in this province. So I'm saying the only way we could perhaps have avoided that would have been Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi admitting that at one stage, having been part of the African National Congress, because at some point he was a member of the Youth League of the ANC.
Yes.
Perhaps it could be him admitting that he abandoned at some stage the revolutionary liberation movement for some reasons, and maybe he could have stayed within the liberation movement, the revolutionary liberation movement. But also by the ANC admitting that perhaps more discussion, more understanding, more communication, more interaction would have worked better in terms of averting what later became this conflict. If this could have been done at the end of the 1970s, at the beginning of the 80s. I think the crucial years that we lost would have been 1978, 1979, 80, 81. Those were the crucial years that we lost. If leadership at the highest level at that time, Inkosi Mangosuthu Phelezi on one hand, maybe the president of the ANC, OR on the other. But I'm saying maybe there wasn't enough time on the side of the ANC being in exile and faced with a mammoth of task of driving the ship of liberation in the country. Perhaps there wasn't enough time dedicated solely to this cause, and there wasn't space to deal with it fully, and perhaps anticipate the consequences of the non-availability of time and space to deal with this, to close the gap between the ANC and that. I think with hindsight, that could have been the only way we could have averted this thing which liberals termed black on black violence, which we in the ANC don't accept as a proper definition of what happened in the 80s and the 90s.
By that point, Mr. Mkhunu, am I understanding you correctly? You as the ANC are not accepting that if you look beyond the foot soldiers who are perpetrating the violence. In other words, you are saying, no, not black on black, given that the state machinery and its apparatus was behind it.
The ANC exists today in KZN. The IFP still exists in KZN.
Yes.
We could still be fighting. We could still be fighting if we were fighting on our own, ordinarily.
I understand you.
But we argue and will always argue and even submit evidence, if need be, that the apartheid state and its machinery
yes.
was on the driver's seat on this conflict. Whether it got through the IFP or through any other means, you know the story about Askaris, you know the story about other police operators and so on. So we argue our point from that point of view.
Yes.
But I'm saying, apart from that, if there had been clear anticipation, time allowing, the environment allowing, both for the ANC and the IFP, the ANC operating from exile, driving its core mission, which was the liberation war, or in other words, the liberation struggle,
yes.
and the fight for freedom. That was the focus. But if there was space and time and a conducive environment, perhaps there could have been more discussion, more interaction, and more of the discussion even at the highest level, if there was full anticipation of what lay ahead between the ANC and the IFP. And this could have averted the bloodshed that we saw in the 80s and in the first 5 years of the 1990s.
Your point is clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's my introduction and background. I now need to move to 2011.
Yes.
All right. I just want to say in passing, from the beginning of 1997, though, up to 2011, political killing remarkably decreased, surging only around particular periods That is during general election, during local government election. So whenever you had the election, during the campaign and up to the day, there would be a surge of violence. Otherwise, up to December 1996, the so-called political violence really subsided,
yes.
Including in the hotspots, if I could use that particular word. I then make a point that says peace processes involving political parties, churches, non-government organizations, and prominent individuals in our province and elsewhere played an important role in changing the situation for the better. That is from 1996, or even from 1994 onwards. There has, however, never been any organized big dialogue to intensify and consolidate peace involving the same people. And I say, I think this is an unfortunate omission up to now. We could, from 1994 or even from 1996 or even later, have said we still need maybe a bi-yearly, a biannual kind of gathering, maybe 2 days at a time, where we meet as role players, various role players in the province, dialogue with an objective of intensifying a peace, intensifying understanding, consolidating and broadening understanding of democracy in our province, using that past experience and infusing this into the new generation, and actually taking on board everybody throughout our province and dialogue. Instead, what we do now is every time there's going to be elections, we form some committee,
yes,
of political parties under government, and then we monitor violence and so on. This is reacting only, yes, to what would have happened in the past or in that particular. But there hasn't been a deliberate effort or decision on our part to say, let us dialogue, let us intensify, let us create a platform, let us educate, let us consolidate democracy and broader understanding thereof. I think it's an omission.
Mr. Mkhunu, you are obviously aware that ultimately we will ask for your recommendations. Let me do this prematurely. This point you are making about the omission and the lack of proactivity, which is frequent, can we record that as the Commission as one of your recommendations?
It's one of my very strong recommendations that perhaps the Commission could consider making that at the end. It really is something I've considered, yes, and I'm duly making that recommendation that there be a dialogue, maybe once a year or maybe once in 2 years, so that we bury deeper and deeper all these things that have happened in the past, and in their space we water the tree of peace, of broadening understanding of the meaning of democracy, and actually showcase the joys of democracy in our province.
Yes.
And even the kind of dialoguing to resolve political differences and containing them. And affording the people of this province space where they could make regular submissions to say, this is what we've been experiencing in the past year or 2 years. Because at times in a particular given area, Violence tend to take place over a long period, with us only occasionally reacting and not actually coming up with something substantial in terms of resolving that. That could be a steady way and a continuously available platform for dialoguing and taking the people of the province on board. I make that point.
Thank you.
Of course, I do, as I've made a comment, that some initiatives do get taken by government briefly from time to time around elections. And it should be noted that KwaZulu-Natal has never, to the best of my knowledge, had political killings-free election, to the best of my knowledge. We have never had a situation where we go for a round of elections, whether local or general, and during the campaign up to the day of elections, there isn't anybody who lose their lives as a result of political killing. So in a way, I'm saying the province is still experiencing political killings during campaigning. Up to 1996 and during the elections campaign, political killings were mostly between parties, political parties. The state now has basically disappeared as a driver of political killings, gradually from 1994 up to now. So these are the points that I'm submitting. Now let's deal with political killings from 2011. In other words, this is how I close the gap between the periods at hand. Political killings in the province have now taken a new turn. The phenomenon is within and around the African National Congress. Still targeted local politicians. In other words, still targeted, but this time with local politicians falling victim, and increasingly so. I hope I'm making myself very clear. So it's a new turn with the phenomenon being within and around the African National Congress, but still targeted, except that now local politicians are the victims, and this is on the increase. Let me indicate a few factors as I pick them up in my verbal interactions with affected individuals and affected communities and so on. And sometimes I pick these things up when people make a call, and I'm always now available for calls, it seems, because I'm unemployed, so people know that I'm not going to say I'm in meetings and so on. So they just freely call. And I get to understand more and more, including immediately after some of these ongoing incidents. And sometimes I go there and interact with them. In the main, people who have been targets in the period, that is from 2011 up to now, are councillors, are potential councillors, and I make a difference between a councillor and a potential councillor. Branch leadership of the African National Congress, including those who operated sub-regions. There's some level in the hierarchy of the ANC that we call sub-region and zones in the case of eThekwini, where a number of branches get clustered and then into a zone or into a sub-region outside of eThekwini. And this also includes influential and prominent politicians at a local level. So it could be a councillor, it could be a potential councillor, it could be a leader in a zone or a sub-region, or you could just be prominent or influential, but you are not a councillor, you are not in these structures. So this is the category of people that I think are in the receiving end at this particular point in time. Let me just confine myself to issues around councillors and potential councillors. These are being councillor is something that is easily accessible. Paying public position for most of the people at local level. That's the first point that I make. You don't have to have any academic qualification. You don't have to have whatever money. It comes to you when it's election time that you can make yourself available, and you can find yourself from a position where you are not getting anything in the form of income, and suddenly you get yourself some income. So it's easily available. But because it is easily accessible and it's paying, it is gradually becoming highly competitive. It's no exaggeration that at any given point you can find up to 10 people competing to be a councillor in a ward, or to be a PR councillor, or people wanting to become PR councillors in the same area. So the point is, competition is very high. And it promises double growth. One growth is in terms of your social status. You become somebody all of a sudden. When you are a councillor, you suddenly get respected. Even by people in their weddings, you get acknowledged. Even in functions, even if there are birthday functions, you are the most available public figure at a local level, yes, as a councillor. So you get the status. You even become conscious of it in terms of your dress code. Even your family and your immediate families, they become associated with the councillor, and you get a status social. But on the other hand, it also pays financially, because you are getting income directly in the form of an allowance or a salary. That's the first scenario. The second one about this, if you are associated with, firstly, the campaign of a councillor, and your councillor of choice becomes a winner, you, not the councillor himself or herself now, but if you are in the inner circle of a councillor, because you influenced, you supported, from that inner circle outwards, in layers, and there are those layers. You can't easily and ordinarily identify them, but there are those layers. There is a person who would be number one in a councillor in terms of closeness. Yes. From the old days of identifying you as a councillor, giving you support, influencing other people, and actually delivering you as a councillor. That circle, that's how it forms. there's benefit for you, depending, notwithstanding where you are in the circle around the councillor. Because it puts you next in line, in inverted commas. So you would soon or later get to be a member of the branch executive, or in a zone or a sub-region, or even in the REC. It goes like that. Either you are in those positions and then you influence a situation where so-and-so becomes a councillor, or you influence things that so-and-so becomes a councillor, and then you get to the structures. It goes like that, in a way. So it benefits. Thirdly, proximity to tenders or proximity to power broking, to a power broking position within the political power ladder. This in turn brings the honor to offer employment and, of course, other favors. So when you are a councillor, when you become a councillor, you are in a close proximity for awarding tenders, either formally or informally, directly or indirectly. So it has benefits. Or you become a power...
I'm sorry to interrupt. How does it operate indirectly?
It operates indirectly because as a councillor, you know what is going to come up in your discussions in formal council meetings. You know what tender is going to be out, where, for how much, all those details you have. And you then informally go to potential interested parties. You get to them and to say, you know what, there is this tender coming. I thought I should just inform you. If sometimes conversations can go on to say, can you get me papers, or can you brief me more, or can you link me up? So, in that way. And then it proceeds on and on. What is there for me, and all those things. But this is how it happens informally. So this is a benefit. But there's another syndrome. You remember the reason why I'm outlining these things is how tensions unintentionally develop, because you compete in all these processes. But the other factor in the competition is the syndrome, which we can call my or our turn to eat has come. There is that syndrome. It doesn't have a chairman or a secretary, but it's a movement, a periodical movement. It's unidentifiable. But you do become conscious of it. It's our turn to eat. And it becomes very powerful. It can move a woman or a man. And it can throw you on the other side. My turn or our turn to eat. Let me move to the other one, to the other factor, underlying factor, and how it manifests. This is manipulation and factionalism within the ANC. I'm now on issues that I say are internal or around the African National Congress. When positions within the organizations are available through manipulation, mostly based on factions, it becomes a factor in potential violence, sometimes which develops into full violence. The benefit that I've spoken about from the practice, from this practice of factionalism and manipulation, often go to the manipulating individual or faction in the form of guarantees for continued support. If you are in a position at regional level or even at provincial level, as a powerful individual or an individual in a powerful position, or with a grouping, an inner grouping of yourself in that particular position, you benefit when you manipulate. And you also benefit via your faction when you manipulate. And what do you benefit? For you, it's continued support from the beneficiary of manipulation. Well, the fellow would know that I'm here because I mean, things were manipulated to my favor.
Yes.
And then I must pay via continued support. And then the fellow who sits somewhere will always benefit as well via continued support from the ground, which nowadays you feel is necessary over and above or even despite ordinary appeal to the electorate and to membership. The practice often sees lists manipulated. You know, in the NC, there's a system of selecting a councillor. You go to the PGM, you go to community, you go to a selection panel. That at the local government, you go through all those stages. It's possible that even if you come number one, you come as number one in all these selection processes. You still can't be a councillor, or you can still not be number one in the list in your PR list.
Yes.
Where ordinarily you would have been number one. But because you are not in a particular faction, the list gets manipulated in one way or the other. And this is aside from balancing gender, which is something that has been accepted long ago in the African National Congress as a matter of principle. But over and above that, and despite that, outside of that, there exists a system of manipulation.
Mr. Mqunu, at what level or levels is this manipulation?
You go through, you know, let me explain further how it takes place, because it takes place at different levels.
Yes.
This practice often sees lists manipulated in line with factional preferences. Manipulation is a highly involved rot. It includes the following. It includes sometimes manipulating membership. So you know long before time or that there's going to be a branch meeting, and in order to get to the meeting, the elective meeting, you manipulate membership so that the people who get in are those on the list, in other words, the voters' roll.
Yes.
But then you manipulate it such that those who are in majority are the ones that are going to ensure a particular outcome that is predetermined.
Yes.
That's the first level. So you can do that. The other one is via deployment. There's something called deployment. When there's going to be an elective meeting in a branch, you send somebody, you give them a particular brief in terms of what outcome is wanted by whoever.
Yes.
So you brief the person, when you come back, you must come back with so and so, or with this kind of result. You will then design tactics. You will point at so and so, they will be ready, they've been briefed, they will sit this side or that side. So all those things, there are those things. You brief a deployee, including briefing a deployee to say, when you see that things are not in your favor, call the meeting off, saying for one reason or the other. Call it non-correct. Or a correcting meeting, say it's non-correct. You are the designated official. Just use your brazen power to say, irregardless of the actual counting, just be brazen and say it's non-correct, and then go out, leave. Or say it is correcting when it is not correcting. When everybody can see it's not correcting, you say it is correcting because you have that assumed power. There's manipulation. Then it also happens, as I say, by pointing nominations in meetings. You know, you point at nominators. You say, when people raise hands, you don't ordinarily point. You point at people with a particular understanding. I'm pointing at you now. You are going to nominate so and so, and then I point at you. You are going to support this, and then I say, yeah, close or something like that. And then you also do it through counting. You count hands. You say Muerane has the majority when actually Muerane has the minority. And you look at people in a brazen way. You say, this is the result. The one who has a lesser number, you tell them that he or she actually has a bigger number.
Yes. Fortunately, I don't have any ambitions for public office.
I take the point. It's merely an example. All right. But you also do manipulation through placements on rationalized lists. Once lists have been compiled and they are submitted somewhere, you're a committee or whatever, you start balancing them, you change them. Not using the actual results that as they came to you, you juggle them. Number one becomes number two, or number 7 or number 4, and so on. You just do it physically. Or you do it through quorums, as I said at the beginning. Sometimes you even do it via venues. You say in the morning, the venue is a public works office. You tell people, or like yesterday, a few hours before the meeting, you change the venue. You say, no, the venue is now that side. So many people will come this side, and then others will go that other side via social media. And then you go on with the process when others are waiting. Or you send them there, but you come here. It does happen. It has happened in the past.
I suppose, based on your evidence, those who are misled, it will depend on which faction they are.
Definitely. It will depend. And so people who are here finally belong to one faction, and they elect, and then they go. Sometimes in one branch, you are able to get 2 submissions. One submission saying the meeting never said, and then on the other, no, the meeting said. We were in such and such a place. No, this one was not there. And indeed, you were not there. Then this one says, no, but how could I not be there? Because I was there. This is what we got. No, the venue changed. There was this and that and so on. So you do this manipulation to manipulate overall final results. So it's difficult to say exactly it all happens at this particular stage because it happens at various stages and so on. But sometimes it happens via times for scheduled meetings. You say the meeting is at 10, but it's actually at 3. Or you say it's at 3, but it took place at 10. So you don't change the venue, but you change the times. But at times you also do it by intimidation. Around Durban, there was something that we got to know, something called bouncers. I come from a rural area, so I've never come across a bouncer. You call a meeting of the ANC where you expect ANC members to be present, those who qualify, but then enter a bouncer. Now, I asked one fellow, what's a bouncer? They say a bouncer is a physically big and visible male with intimidating eyes and body who is sent for the purpose, depending on what the brief is. He would take you out of a meeting at the whim of the person who directs him. And so sometimes it's a person you have never seen in the area or in a meeting of the ANC. You see them all of a sudden dressed for the purpose and so on. So we use those people called bouncers. You can also call police at times. You call police. You say, well, there are some people that you would need to take out. And depending on your influence on police, they come and do the job. Either municipal police or even in some cases SAPS. Or your own particular personal security, your bodyguards. Or a private security company you are associated with as an individual or as a faction.
Yes.
So these are all new kind of tendencies that were not there before. That were not. If I mean, incidental, there could be a fight or what, but now there are all these mechanisms to get desired results. Now, I think I've dealt with.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Would you describe that as a sort of a physical way of gatekeeping?
It is. It is a form of that. It is one form of that, because sometimes there are people who qualify to be at the meeting, but because you didn't include them on a list of the voters' roll, deliberately so, then they are kept outside. And then to guarantee that they are not going to come, you use a bouncer or any of your security apparatus that's available.
Mr. Mkhunu, Chairperson, I propose that we only adjourn for lunch once Mr. Mkhunu is done with his evidence. May I at the stage then propose a 15-minute tea break? After that, we'll continue until he's done.
Yes. The Commission will adjourn for about 15 minutes for a comfort break. Thanks.
Right, the Morani Commission live there from Durban, listening to testimony from former KZN Premier Senzo Mqunu. He spoke quite a bit about his political activism during the 80s and during his time as a university student. And in the 80s, he says that the state fueled tensions between the UDF and the IFP. He said that violence in KwaZulu-Natal was usually targeted towards those who were politically active, and that killings were also targeted towards anti-apartheid activists. He said, interestingly enough, that the police and other assassins carried out these murders and that many firearms were distributed in the province from the end of the 80s to 1996. He said that when the ANC was unbanned, the KwaZulu-Natal police had built a profile by being involved in conflict. He says that in the greater scheme of things, the ANC always felt justified to defend its cause and that the violence was never masterminded by the ANC nor the IFP, but rather that they were driven to act. So they are on a short 15-minute break and then they will continue hearing testimony by the former Premier. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. You're with the Midday Report.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
The Pan-African Parliament as a legislative body could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur 4th tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur 4th tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.